Welcome to the International Customer Experience Day and the UK Google Hangout on starting and energizing culture change in your organization. My name's Martin Dowson. I'm Director of CX Strategy for Commotion and a member of the Board of Ambassadors for the UK CXPA, and I am your host today. This is an interactive session where you're going to be able to submit questions to the panel via Twitter using the hashtag CXDay. So please, to get 110% out of your time together, please do submit your questions online. So whilst you're launching your Hootsuites and Twitter apps, and before I introduce the panel, let me just take a moment to reflect on why culture is such an important topic in the boards of today's aspiring customer-led organizations. There's been a fundamental shift in the relationship between business and their customers over the last 15 years. And in many ways, this has been enabled by technology, which is arming people with more information than ever before, more global buying options than ever before, and a louder voice than ever before. Business as usual is over. You can no longer simply build a product and take it to market. We now need to fundamentally understand people's needs and deliver to those. It's a fundamentally different way of thinking about doing business, and one in which organizations must become customer-led from the outside in and people-shaped from the inside out. For many companies, this will mean a shift in culture, and in today's Hangout, we have a fabulous panel of 3 innovative thinkers in the space of customer-led business who are going to help us answer questions about how to make a culture shift with 2 perspectives. One when we're starting out, and one when we're in the middle of culture change. So, let me introduce you to our panel. First up, we have Darren Johnson, ex-Chief Growth Officer for Kodak Alaris, the company that has emerged like a phoenix from the mothership of Kodak Eastman. Everyone will, of course, be aware of Kodak's tough times and perhaps not so aware yet of their recent emergence out of Chapter 11. Suffice to say that Darren's experience there and in many other organizations of how culture impacts an organization in the good and in the tough times is invaluable and comes right from the coalface. Darren, thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Matt Bell, who is the UK General Manager of Citizen M Hotels. This exciting international hotel brand have taken customer-led to heart and built their business from scratch with the end experience in mind. Having identified the experience desired by their target market, they set about to reverse engineer the culture and the organization that would support delivering that experience. They've successfully married a culture of obsession for the customer with operational excellence and financial rigor, a combination that's seeing them grow and grow with great success. Matt, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Finally, we have Ben Smithwell, culture hacker, actually that's my nickname for him, from Smithwell, CX and Experience Design. Ben is a CX master and an experience design ninja and has vowed to banish mediocrity and welcome in the remarkable. His experience across a number of clients and industries is in embedding enduring change to deliver remarkable experiences. What I personally love about Ben is his integrity. If he's working with you, it's because he believes in you and he thinks it's going to be fun. Ben, I'm glad you're here because that means you believe that this is going to be fun, right? Good, thanks. Our panel are on mute at the moment, waiting to be asked questions. In a moment, I'm going to put some questions to the panel, and we're going to use that to explore a few topics around culture. So while we're doing that, please don't forget to submit your questions using the hashtag #CXDay, which we'll answer after my first round of questions with the panel. So let's get started. So my first question to the panel, and I think what we'll do is we'll go to Matt first on this and then see who else wants to add to this, is thinking about starting on a program and looking at changing your culture. What are the simplest things that people can do right away to cultivate a customer-led culture, Matt?
So I think the way that we would look at it is, in essence, the customer is the most important person within your business. And the people that talk to your customer are therefore also going to be an important part of what's going on. So I guess if you're starting to look at this in place and wanting to create that culture, understanding exactly what the customer wants is a good place to be. Would be to go and talk to the people that talk to your customers, and get a handle on what it is that they experience, and what the feedback is they get from the customer, the guest, on a regular basis. And I think that the next piece from that is if you have a desired guest experience or customer experience that you want, and there are values that you associate around that, people to work for you that share those values. So if you want to create a surprising culture, then employ surprising people. If you want it to be genuine and real, then find people that are themselves genuine and real. And the final bit to it, I'd really say, is to make sure that you create an environment in which those people are capable of being, or allowed to be, or encouraged to be, who they are. And again, they can be in themselves those values in the first place. Will be, for me, a simple and a good place to start.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you. Does anybody else on the panel want to talk about some of the things that you think we can do now as you're starting out quickly and easily?
Yeah, I'll talk for a minute if you like. I definitely agree with everything that Matthew said there. I think in addition, I think change needs to come from the top. And often if we're talking about culture change, it needs a strong catalyst. And sometimes perhaps even a shock to the system. You know, when was the last time senior management actually met with customers, looked into the whites of their eyes? There's a client of ours. It transpired that they hadn't actually engaged with a certain section of their clients for, I think it was over 2 years. So when was the last time the important people met a customer? One thing we do is we send people out on a service safari, out into the ether, to experience their business firsthand. And quite often people are quite shocked and, to be honest, sometimes appalled at what they see out there, at the coalface, where it counts, where customers are being served and so forth. And I suppose another thing is to engage the staff in a wider sense as early as possible. Ask them about how they think the customers perceive them, and then perhaps confront them. Actually, I don't think confront is the right word, but use real-life verbatim, videos, storyboards, etc., to help bridge that reality gap and show people actually what customers do think about them and their service and their brand. I think the most important point here is that as early as possible, you really want to try and bring the customer to life via whatever means possible. That's absolutely crucial to anything you do. I think once you've done that, if I could just add one final thing, in any organisation you'll find that there are pockets of wonderful customer experience fanatics, if you like, the mavericks in the business, those people who just get it. So what we want to try and do is get these people, harness them, and turn them into early advocates and adopters for the change, and really start to empower them. I suppose culture change, as much as anything, it's about re-educating people and spreading ideas, and you can't achieve much with a hammer. You need to try and evoke change very much via mutual consent.
So, Darren, I'm going to come to you in just a second, but it's interesting just to see those two stories kind of come together, because, of course, Matt, with Sisters in M, although obviously every time you're launching a new hotel now, obviously you're 7 or 8 hotels in now, you're very much an existing organisation, but the model started when there was nothing there. And very often people kind of look at that new businesses and say, well, they had a greenfield site. But what I'm hearing, the fundamental similarity there is about whether it's re-educating or starting with, it's about that connection to understanding the customers and the values and making sure your people share those. So recruit right in the first place, but then there's a re-education if you're actually dealing with an existing organisation. Darren, you've worked in a very different industry from Matt with hotels. Have you got anything you want to add on at this point in time about just getting started on change?
I mean, just to say, I agree entirely with what Ben said, and it's especially true within larger organizations. There can be this tendency to be very internally focused, whether it's on the financial results or the processes that move everything forward, or a whole range of different internal measurements. It's just so critical to understand, and it sounds so simple to say, understand who your customers are, but really understand who they are, talk to them, and listen to what they have to say. And in my experience, the most valuable insights of how to grow a successful business invariably come from a deep understanding of both the market and the customers that you serve. And that gives you the platform of information to be able to innovate novel solutions that really satisfy those customer needs. But it starts with understanding who your customers are.
Brilliant, thank you. And in a sense, actually, it seems from your answers that the next question of what's the most important thing to focus on seems to have been pretty much answered in that. Your smiles tell me that we're in agreement there, which is focus on understanding the customers in order to give you something to focus what the cultural change is about. Perhaps if I may, can I go to the third question then and say, and Darren, to you in particular to start with, and then the others to chip in. Many companies have got an existing framework and an existing way of being and are organized around either being product focused or operationally focused or sales focused. So now we're talking about being customer led. This question here is it actually worthwhile pursuing total culture change when you've got a deep rootedness in it? And I guess what that's coming from is it possible to change?
So I think it absolutely is, and I honestly don't see a good alternative to building a business which is customer led, which is a customer focused business. Culture is tricky because culture is what people do when no one's looking. Effectively, it's kind of the default setting for behavior and values within your organization, and it needs to be led from the top. The most critical starting point of that, I think Ben already alluded to it, is alignment of the senior leadership team. So when you talk about cultural change, well, first of all, why are you changing the culture? Why is it so important to change the culture? What's your company's strategy? What's your vision? How do you see your business evolving in the future? And all those things help inform what kind of culture you're trying to build, because not every customer-led culture is necessarily the same, and not every culture that you need within every business is necessarily the same. There will be differences, but it starts at that very highest level of understanding your business vision, your business strategy, and then how culture fits into that. But I would argue that being a customer-led organization is absolutely critical for success today. And if you look back, the sources of dominance within industry have kind of evolved over the years. So you started off with mass production. If you were great at mass production, you had a fantastic business. Right up to recent times, skipping through a few stages, where the internet economy certainly changed the way we all communicate and gave rise to a whole load of different business models and new possibilities. But what we're seeing now is this democratization almost of relationships within the way that everything is connected. We've seen the birth of radical transparency. So not just prices are transparent, but company practices are transparent. Satisfied and dissatisfied customers are very transparent. Within that democratized world where the balance of power has kind of shifted from this asymmetric view where companies had all the power to now consumers have a lot more choice, and they're able to exercise that very, very easily. So building a business that focuses on being successful with your customers and not being product-led, for me, is just an essential part of building a long-term growth strategy for your business. So the need, therefore, if you have a product-led culture, to move that to a customer-led culture doesn't go away. You need to do that. It's not easy. I would say that is one of the most difficult things that you need to achieve when you look at sort of legacy businesses that have been around for many, many years, but it's something that can be achieved. You need to put a program in place. You need to put a program in place driven by alignment of the top management team to make that happen.
So thank you very much. And Matt, what I think is interesting is we've got two very different scales of organisation between yourself and Darren. And going back to my reference before about some of the best examples that we have around the world of more customer-led organizations, some of the best examples are from some of the newer organizations. But it does always strike me that they're tackling, just as Darren said, exactly the same issues. It's easy to look at some companies like SysNM and see the front end of that organization and just believe that's all there is about it. There's a lot more to SysNM than just the obsession with the customer service at the front end. I'm trying not to put words in your mouth. I'm going to stop. I'm going to ask you to tell us a bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, look, ultimately there is a sort of trinity of things that need to come together to make it work, and understanding that your customer is at the forefront of what you're doing is one part to that, and creating an environment in which that customer feels comfortable and shares the values of your business is incredibly important. This sort of emotional connection with your guest, then you're far likely to engender loyalty from that person, and in today's very democratic, very transient place, then winning loyalty is an incredibly important part. But fundamentally, if your core product, and it's a funny thing within hospitality because service is intrinsic to what your product is, it's difficult to separate the two, and I think increasingly you're seeing that in lots of industries that actually the service is also intrinsic with the product that you offer. But obviously within hospitality it is. But fundamentally, if the bedroom and the bed isn't great, if the shower is not great, then it's not going to work either. If the cocktail that you make isn't great, if the coffee that you make isn't right, and if it's not aligned with who you put yourself out there to be, then of course, no matter how great, make up for what is a poor product that exists within it as well. And of course, you can have a great product and you can have a great service, but fundamentally, if it's not producing for you financially, you're not going to have much of a business for very much longer either. So making sure that you're viable, of course, is critical. And so finding this balance between these three areas is what is ultimately going to lead to success. I guess the SysNM piece is we started with the customer rather than necessarily starting with the product. The product and the process come off the back of understanding what who the guest is and what the experience is that we want to create. And I guess that's your starting point, but never losing the fact that these three areas must remain in balance at all times.
And presumably that's how you're going to be selling it to the board. And I know that obviously SysNM started with that in mind, and therefore an example of growing a business in that way. But Darren and Ben, I guess the message here is you need to be able to have that message about why this is going to be important to the business and linking it back to the growth and the success of the business. And I guess the principle is that being focused on the customer is going to be your best chance of doing that. Let's move on to the second level of questions, and this is really about thinking about when you're in that. There'll be some people who are watching this who are not at the beginning of trying to convince the board that there's a need for the culture change or reacting to a request to actually look at invigorating a change in the culture. They're actually in the middle of it, and maybe they've started in some of the ways that we've said, maybe they haven't, and are looking to try and re-energize it. For any program of change, there's always that moment when the storm clouds gather and things get a little bit harder than you were expecting or hoping. So the first question is, how can we weather the storm during significant leadership and economic pressures to maintain our emphasis on customers? Now, this can come from change in leadership. This can come from economic pressures making the leadership change their focus. Sometimes that can be from panic, and sometimes that can be from strategic thinking. You're not always in control of what's happening around you. So, Darren, perhaps if I can go to you first. So, significant leadership and economic pressures. How do we weather the storm?
So, I think one of the key things with it is, I mean, let's get it clear. All organizations, when they try to move culture from one state to another, are going to face challenges. It's going to be it's going to go through some difficult times as well as some fun times in which you make lots of learnings. You launch new products that are based on everything that you've learned by being a customer-led organization. So there will be ups and there will be downs. I think the important thing within that is to make sure that you bring the organization along with you. What does that mean in practice? That means you need to be very good at internal communication. You need to effectively, in my view, build your strength of internal brand within the organization as much as you build it externally. And you need to keep the rigor up. You need to keep plugging the message. You need to keep clear in your vision. You can't waver. Even though there will be challenges coming in, you still need to maintain that kind of purity of, we're moving the business in this direction, and these are the steps that we're doing, and make sure communication is absolutely transparent with all of your employees, and that they all understand. They all understand why we're doing this. And when you have that deep understanding of, we understand what the end point is, we understand the vision, and we really buy into that. We think it's a great place to be. You will get support throughout the organization, and you will get the evangelists, and you will get the people that totally buy into this. And it's that grassroots level support that will see the organization through those difficult times. I mean, there aren't any set answers as to, how do I do this, because every company is going to be different. But having a program which is well managed, which involves a comprehensive communication element to it, that takes everyone on the journey, I think is your best defense against some of the storms that you will come across.
Great, thank you very much. Ben, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think Darren's really hit the nail on the head there. I suppose when you're talking about companies have already engaged in some kind of cultural change process and they're experiencing difficulties, it comes down to the age-old question: is it strategy or culture that will dictate and define how a business reacts to these kinds of challenging events? I'm sure all people have different kind of views on this. I certainly have my own. But I think if an organisation is being genuinely customer-centric, it should realise that customer centricity is about the long game. It's about relationships, ultimately relationships between humans, and the customer-led organisation should be brave enough. And I think it does require bravery to suppress that temptation to substitute short-term financial gimmicks for long-term gains. Would the purpose-led customer-centric organisation, would it respond to a challenging economic climate by, hitting its customers with sneaky charges, hidden fees, those kinds of things? No, you'd hope that it would redouble its efforts, and if anything, bring customers in much, much closer. I suppose to that extent, it might even serve to be a catalyst for great things for that organisation. And just listening to what Darren was saying there, and Matthew before, it got me thinking actually on a vaguely related note. Those organisations that operate in an environment of deep collaboration, transparency, openness, even democracy, dare I say it, they seem to naturally tend to adopt the customer over the long term. I suppose is customer-centric culture, is it an inevitability for the thoughtful, emotionally intelligent 21st century organisation?
Sorry, struggling to take myself off mute there. Sorry. Matt, is there anything you'd like to add on
that? Only to say that I think that the storms, as I said, are inevitably going to come. The question is, if you make the right decisions at the right time, it's a question of how long the storm will last for. And I think getting that piece right and making those good decisions and ensuring that you have the strength that exists within the business to weather that piece will get you through it.
Great, thank you very much. So let's, in our last kind of few minutes, let's have a look at what are some of the most innovative or unique ways that you've seen organizations encourage that customer-focused culture. Who would like to chip in first on that? Sounds like Ben, but he hasn't unmuted himself. There he goes.
Yeah, that's one for the bloopers reel, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, there are lots of examples out there, and I think encouragingly, you seem to come across more and more of them as time goes on. I have to put a penny in the jar before I mention Zappos, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's companies that encourage their staff to use creativity to make their customers happy. An example of Netflix is in customer experience folklore, isn't it? That Star Trek laden customer service interaction from last year. I think everyone has seen that in the whole world. But I think it's what goes behind that that's the interesting thing. It's the fact that employees are not only able, but they are expected to go out on a limb. I think implicit there is that it's fine as long as they're trying to do the right thing and they've got the right values at heart, then that's fine. They might not always get it right, and I suppose this raises a wider question about the notion of failure. It strikes me that some of these really innovative companies, they allow people that great freedom to be able to fail and to learn from it and to apply that learning. So I think that's a very important thing there. If we give an example of an organisation I think is doing a fantastic job at the moment, I do have a bit of a vested interest here, but the client we're working with at the moment, and they are a university, and just imagine the siloed higher educational environment they're operating in, and the challenges that they face as a whole. But yet you go into their largest office, right in the middle is a massive thing that contains everything that students have said about their organisation so far today. It's updated on a probably half an hourly basis. They trawl the net, they trawl all their social channels, bringing information and insight in and acting on it straight away. They have an active service design club that meets every couple of weeks, and they're trying to spread this customer-centric knowledge throughout the organisation department. You go into certain heads of department offices, and there are massive journey maps on the walls with pain points labelled on, and things written down here about emotions that people are experiencing at this point in the journey. You think, this is fantastic. They're doing some great work here. The interesting part is that they've decided to do a bit of a restructure, and it's a cost-neutral restructure. No one's losing their jobs. What they have done to get rid of these organisational silos, they've literally torn up everyone's job description who isn't an academic, and they have gone right back to the customer and used the customer's wants and needs to define very rigorously what those new job roles will be, which I think is absolutely fantastic. It means that everyone in the organisation has a clear purpose that maps back directly to the customer. So I think that's a good example of this kind of thing.
Great. Well, we have just a couple of minutes left, but I just want to pick up on that theme that you said there, Ben, and just link that to how Matt introduced right back at the beginning. And something that's actually then come through all of your comments, which I think is that, and Benny, can you mute? Because I think we're hearing us back.
Sorry.
There we go, that's it, that's great. It seems to me that there was something about having a very, very clear vision that is absolutely connected to your understanding of who the customer was. And Matt told us about understanding that customer and understanding their values and matching their values to your values. You're talking about culture, that's fundamentally what culture is about. Linking that to the growth that your business needs to see, and the bottom line that the board need to understand and that the management needs to understand that's going to drive the business forward. Matt, it seems you were in the position of being able to start and to recruit for those values, and Ben and Darren, you're talking about re-educating for those values and giving people a compelling reason to move towards that. It seemed also that there was a theme about trust and trusting people to do the right things. And those, when you talked about no job titles, Ben, I know that one of the funny stories I heard from Mike, Matt's CEO, was that they don't really have job titles there. When they were doing an investor call, they had to invent one for somebody to talk to potential investors. An example of an organisation that really takes that to heart. So it seems that we're talking about values. It seems that we're talking about being able to link those to the business case, to recruit for them, to educate for them, and to use those values as a fundamental part of your culture change. It's come to past, and I need to wrap up because this is the end of our time slot. But just want to say thank you very much to Matt, General Manager of Citizen M, Darren, and Ben. Thank you all very, very much for taking the time to be with us today, for answering these questions. And to everybody else who's taking part in International Customer Experience Day, this is just one of many Hangouts that are happening today, one of many Twitter chats that are happening today, and one of many local networking events that are happening today around the world. So please enjoy the rest of your International Customer Experience Day, and I look very much forward to seeing you all again next year. Guys, do you want to say goodbye?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.